السلام عليك سيدي ومولاي أيها الإمام الحسن. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Dear brothers and sisters, the days and nights after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein are such that Lady Zainab alayha salam was taking care of the women and the children. Upon the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, the enemies of Allah started looting the camp, burning the tents, scaring the women and children, all of them running in the open desert, the women calling, the children crying, Lady Zainab alayha salam gathering them. They say at night so many scenes of Karbala were played in that night after everyone was killed from the men. Only Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, who was ordered to stay by his father Imam Hussein. Dear brothers and sisters, they say the woman, the children, feeling the loneliness in that night, it was very hard for them to go to sleep. So many different scenes. You see the woman that who is looking for her husband amongst the dead and killed. You see the children holding on to their fathers whose life is far gone. You see them wondering what will happen in the days to come. Dear brothers and sisters, Lady Zainab, she was the one holding them together, bringing them together. Lady Zainab, we wish we were with you فنفوز فوزا عظيما. صلوات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. والصلاة والسلام على النبي الهاشمي المدني الأبطحي التهامي السيد البهي السراج المضيء الكوكب الدري صاحب الوقار والسكينة المدفون بالمدينة العبد المؤيد الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The Almighty Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Holy Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم خذ العفو وأمر بالعرف وأعرض عن الجاهلين خذ العفو وأمر بالعرف وأعرض عن الجاهلين خذ العفو وأمر بالعرف وأعرض عن الجاهلين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات Allah Azza wa Jal in this verse commands the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to treat and deal with the people in a certain way. And as we work with the people, dear brothers and sisters, as we develop our relationship with individuals, with one another, many times there are relationships severed, relationships lost, and many times our existence in the society is weak. The reason because we do not understand and we do not know how to build a relationship with others in a way that it becomes a blossoming relationship. The Prophet ﷺ, when he was sent ليزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. التزكية and learning. التزكية is the discipline and the ability to discipline ourselves, to cleanse ourselves in a way that our behaviors are changed. And يعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. And to teach us two things. Al-Kitab, the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, and wisdom. And when you look at wisdom, and you look at the words of Allah Azza wa Jal, in reality, wisdom is the word of Allah, and the word of Allah is wisdom. But the word of Allah Azza wa Jal includes things that can be deduced by the human intellect and things that are beyond the capture of the human mind. For example, if we talk about the details of the purgatory life or the details of the hereafter, it is not the duty or the work of the human intellect to deduce and to describe the details of what happens on the Day of Judgment. But the Day of Judgment itself, as a conclusion, as a necessity, is a product of the human process, the human intellect process. Meaning what? When we see that, for example, for every action, there's a reaction. We know that there must be anything we do, there is a reaction to it, somehow, some sort. Without getting into the details of it, we find out, therefore, there is the human mind, the way it's built on basic axioms that it uses in order for it to deduce different conclusions in its process. So when we say someone is thinking is a process. That process needs content in order for it to work with it. When I say I'm thinking, you tell me about what? I cannot be thinking of nothing. It doesn't work. But thinking is a process. The process of doing something to things. Now these things that are the basic components of human thoughts, what are they? One has to ask themselves. One has to reflect, Because after all, if I am talking here about a grand and great ideas, I need to look at what are these ideas built on. The basics of the human thinking. And if you notice, and I spoke very briefly about it in previous lectures, why do we make mistakes? Our mistakes are made because either our process of thinking was wrong, somewhere along we call it the logic, we used wrong logic. That's where we find fallacies in our logic, in our thinking. That's when we try, for example, they tell you, can God create something He cannot carry? Where's the problem with this? It sounds, wow, you know what? We got the believer, he or she cannot answer. The problem is what? Is in the question. Because the question is full of mistakes. The premise on which the question is based on is wrong. So therefore, the result of the conclusion either becomes impossible. Why? Because the question becomes in the realm of impossibility, the answer is impossible too. Not because the question is right, therefore the conclusion might, what I conclude, will become one that will put me as a believer incapable of answering. So when I say, for example, can God? So here the can is hinging on what? The realm of possibility. Creation hinges on what? Is defined by what Allah does. Because creation, after all, is a work of Allah Azza wa Jal. It creates something, and anything in this universe is a product of what? Of His knowledge, and Allah's will. What He cannot, here's a problem. What He cannot. He and cannot is what? Cannot goes under the realm of impossibilities. Impossibility meaning what? Not that Allah cannot do it. Allah willed that it doesn't happen that way. Two different things. At one point, you know what? I cannot write. I cannot write meaning what? I have the ability to write, but there is deficiency in me that I cannot acquire that ability, that I cannot apply that ability. Now, if you tell someone that does not have, or it is impossible for something to happen, for example, I say, can I be here and not be here at the same time, in the same moment, at the same place? Can I be and not be? Why not? No, really, why can I be and not be at the... I am here, but I'm not here. If I tell you, by the way, I'm here, but I'm not here, what would you tell me? Check your psychiatrist, right? Why does it sound funny when I say I'm here, but I'm not here? You'll tell me, no, you're not here maybe mentally, you're not here emotionally. No, I'm not physically, I'm not here while I'm here. There's a problem, a contradiction, it's an impossibility to say you are here yet you're not here, because for you to be here, it means you cannot not be here. You have to be here. Therefore, the beginning, the premise is wrong that you're not here. These impossibilities and contradictions are built in a way that when we look at them, the human mind and intellect cannot accept them to happen. When we talk about Allah Azza wa Jal, can Allah have a partner? Why is it no? It's impossible. Because to say God, it means what? It means all able. To say all able, He ought to be what? All knowing. To say all knowing, He's all encompassing. To say all encompassing, He's all independent. To say all independent, it means He is infinite, absolute in every way. Therefore, leaving no room to have a partner. Because a partner is what? Dependency. You just kicked dependency out when you said He's independent. Right or wrong? So when you form this logic together, you see there are things that are acceptable and things that are not acceptable. This is the beauty of and the power of the human mind. The mind is so powerful that once you think, that's why Allah Azza wa Jal requires of us, especially those who recite the Quran. The power of the Quran, when you recite it, that it awakens, you know the miracle of the whole Quran? It awakens the human intellect. When Allah says, afala, don't you? When He says, don't you, meaning, question yourself, ask yourself. How many of us go through this process? That is why, excellent, because we ought to do that and question. I have to ask myself, why is Allah asking me this? If I believe Allah Azza wa Jal does not waste and does not do anything in vain, it means whatever question posed in the Holy Quran, it's a question for me to learn, to build myself, to advance me. So therefore, that reflection on the words of the Holy Quran becomes required for our development as individuals, dear brothers and sisters. And furthermore, we ought to question what goes into this mind of ours. The basic axioms and theories. And the more, believe it or not, the more some people tell you don't ask too much, because if you think too much you get lost. No, that's the words of the weak. Thinking is power. Thinking gives you this awakening to explore the abilities you have. Yes, there's a problem here. What is the problem? The problem is when we go on this journey through which we start thinking and developing our abilities, at times there are two things: the actual thought process, and when we stand and try to express ourselves. Many problems, dear brothers and sisters, happen when we start expressing and talking our minds. When we speak our minds, this is where the problem takes place. Why? Some of the processes and some of the ideas, some of the principles in our minds are so meticulous, they are so detailed, and they are so, they require such an attention to the detail that we lack the words to describe what goes in our minds. So we end up communicating the wrong thing to each other. And that's why, for example, when you talk today, when you take simple phrases, for example, idealism, realism, when you talk about the skeptics, when you talk, all these different words and terms mean different things to different people. Even when they study in philosophy, for example, idealism, over the years this term has changed to mean different things. Idealists at one point are the ones who do not believe in the existing of a reality outside the human mind. It's all in the mind. Everything is a figment of your imagination. With this thought, idealism actually sides with what we call sophists, who do not believe that anything really exists. Opposing the sophists are what? Are those who are called either philosophers or realists. At one time, philosophers are the ones who stood against the sophists to completely reject the notion there is no reality outside. So the different terms changed. Now in the middle stood what? What we call the skeptics. They said, well, we do not have a proof to either reject this or approve this. Therefore, we stand in the middle. We don't take a side on this issue. It all sounds good. The agnostics today, we use that term. Oh, he is or she is an agnostic. And you know what's really funny? Well, let me not say funny so I don't offend anyone. It is funny actually. What is it so funny that individuals who are in reality believers, but especially sometimes young men, women from our community, they want to stand out. And what do they stand out by? They stand out by trying to be labeled in a way different than anyone else. Well, yeah, in reality, I'm an agnostic. Really? Define it for me, please. he heard or she heard someone is an agnostic who's a big shot. And you know, if someone is really an agnostic, first of all, it means they thought. In their thinking, they used the right premise and they used the right logic. And I tell you, and I challenge, whoever uses those two will have to come to the right conclusion. The problem is always in using the wrong logic or a fallacy, something that is not truly real, a statement that is not 100%. And we can go into discussion where, is there something 100% or not? Can we? And these are all discussions, dear brothers and sisters, we ought to have. Some of the individuals say, no, don't talk about this. Why? We all go through school. All of us go through college. These are the basic courses that they have in college. And if you think your children are not discussing this, wake up and smell or even drink the coffee, because you're really missing out. There are issues that we need to put out on the table. And these discussions, the discussions of the intellectuals, we need to train the minds of our young men and women to think about these issues. Today, we are faced with very tough questions in the arena of philosophy, whether in the theory of knowledge, whether it is in politics, whether it's in sociology. We need to address issues, and we keep on talking and saying until we turn blue in the face, Islam is the solution for everything. Fine, okay, comes to you, the guy accepts, fine. Tell me, how do we solve an issue in sociology? Explain that to me. He addresses one of the issues, give me one of the issues that we have in America that Islam solves and provides a solution to us. You might be right, but give me a paper that shows this. Give me, you know what, give me one paper. And I'm asking not to challenge, because I don't know. I'm asking to learn. If any one of you knows, tell me. One paper where Islam addressed, a Muslim scholar or scientist addressed an issue that the United States of America is having, and it can be solved through Islamic principles. Not that we cannot do it. The question is, did we do it? Did we take the tools that Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam provide us? Did we take the Holy Quran and truly address an issue and take it apart, analyze it, build it up, and provide a solution? Until we do that, we will always be told religion, its place is on the shelves or in the mosques. Why? It didn't touch our lives. It might have touched what we provide in these lectures, are what? A form and a way to explore how can religion truly touch our lives. Right or wrong? Allah Azza wa Jal in the Holy Quran teaches the Prophet, He tells him, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ, take to forgiveness and enjoin good and turn aside from the ignorant. What is this? This is a social behavior in a community for an individual in order for him or her to bring together and keep a society and a community together. How to deal with people. Now, how do I turn and tell America that this is a behavior that I need to take to forgiveness, I need to enjoin good and turn aside from the ignorant? How do I do that? How do I write this paper and implement it in a program? And when the program, see today, when we look at a lot of these solution-based organizations that try to change the lives of individuals, young kids who are growing up, troubled communities, they don't sit back and just in somewhere in a university classroom talk about solution. They actually take the idea, implement it, they get a grant, they go to the needy where they have a problem, and they try to solve that problem. They measure through data the effectiveness of the principle of doing good, of enjoining good, of forgiveness. How did forgiveness actually in a society, when it was utilized, it was used as a tool amongst and between the individuals, how did it change and turn the community to a better community. We don't have this data to show, this empirical data to show, listen, we applied these principles, look at this community. In addition, even at the level of intellectual thoughts, if we look at, today we face in America, we face some serious questions in America. How is it if we say separation of religion and politics, a very sensitive topic. For us Muslims, where do we stand? If we say, no, we don't want the separation of religion and politics, what are we allowing? We're allowing the majority to come and lead and making this a religious country. If it becomes a religious country, you have the right wing that might come and take over, and God knows what happens. If you don't talk, we become minorities. If we become minorities, then is it any religion or what religion? How do you justify then what? We want to keep it separate? Or does it mean that religion and politics only at the time of the Immaculate? And how do we deal with the issue if some in the Shia school of thought would believe that we ought to, as Shia Muslims, establish a religious government? Then how does it work when we are not living in a country that is not ruled by religion, especially the one we adhere to? All these questions you'll find are important because, believe it or not, our jurists have solved this to us. We are asked at times, okay, well, me as an individual, I'm an American citizen. I'm an American citizen, you are an American citizen. How can we be loyal to our country? Definitely, because our country is not based on religious ideology. It's the formation of this country is to manage the affairs of the people. And to manage the affairs of the people, it means the people have a say in it. And to have a say in it, it means effectively, if I am a dominant factor in my community, I can change the DNA of the community to reflect my needs and also my culture and my tradition. I can integrate this within the form of life that I have. The problem is, do I become participant in the civic life or not? Some of us are not linking all these dots together to make use of the power of being in a country like the United States of America. What we ought to do is change a community within the boundaries allowed to us by the law of the land and within the vast empowerment given to us by the book of Allah Azza wa Jal. You think the Imams alayhim salam for many years, they lived in different times, under different governments. How did they survive? Did they all revolt? No. So it doesn't mean that if a place that we are living in does not match with our belief, we have a revolution. On the contrary, no, we are not required to do that. These kind of decisions and how we work with others and how we coexist with others all stem from understanding the principles of the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. To do all of this, dear brothers and sisters, requires what? Our minds to be engaged in thinking to truly address the questions that are put before us. The process is first to understand what are the problems. Secondly, what solutions do we have, and link the dots together, connect them together. Do we do any of these two? Why do certain individuals become so successful in America, the land of opportunities? Yes, they see the opportunity and they fill that gap. Today, dear brothers and sisters, we have so many individuals that we need amongst us in our communities, individuals that become scholars in our religion and in one area or another and field that is needed by this country. This way we can advance the country we live in. Al-Imam Salamullahi Ta'ala alayhi and all the Imams alayhim salam and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the first thing, you know, he could have been in Medina and just preached to the people. Preaching, telling them do and don't. But you know what effectively he did? The first thing he did when he entered Medina, Medina was a place with many conflicts. A clash, I mean, you talk about the clash of civilizations. It happened in Medina. Al-Aws, Al-Khazraj, the Jews, the Christians, they were all battling in the city of Medina. The Prophet ﷺ was able to draw a ceasefire, and then he drew together an agreement amongst all the conflicting parties, different religions, different way of thinking. He brought them together to live and coexist in one place. Now this is a tangible solution. The first thing, dear brothers and sisters, as we try to understand how do we accomplish this, is an in-depth look at ourselves. And I always tell people, the deeper you look into yourself, the better you become. Why? I don't know if I mentioned this before or not. Not that I've been talking here for a long time, but you know, how do you define a great therapist? A great therapist, a lot of people want help and they want to go and talk to someone. How do you become a great therapist? A great therapist is not only someone that sits you on the couch and gets you rambling. When you ramble, that's good. But you know what's excellent? When there is someone that listens to you. And when you listen attentively, if you ever want to help a brother or a sister, well, if a brother wants to help a brother and a sister wants to help a sister, that is. If you know what's the best thing to do? Listen to them attentively. What does attentively mean? It means that I will listen to my friend and I'll see what is his problem, and I'll try to help him investigate further inside of the depth of himself to find out what does he want to do, what direction he wants to go. And I become a tool for him to understand himself further. You know who's the best therapist? The best therapists are the ones who listen attentively and carefully. And you know what? You can be your own best therapist. You know how? You don't only ask yourself questions, but you go and follow the trail of questions until you end up with an answer. I challenge your minds right now. Many times we think, but what do? We leave so many open-ended questions. When we think, our thoughts don't come to a firm conclusion. They're just open-ended ideas. If you ever, thinking is what? Listening to yourself carefully. When you think and reflect, you're following your thoughts, you're trying to think carefully, you're trying to follow an argument in your mind. Come to a conclusion and you'll find that this conclusion stays with you. And if in the middle of this argument there is something unknown, try to go and seek an answer for that thought that you thought of in your mind and seek an answer for it. You will find one thing. That process of research, whatever you researched in your mind, to fill in that gap in your argument, you'll never forget it. It'll stay with you. The power of thinking is so immense, whatever product on the way, it keeps. So, dear brothers and sisters, The Prophet ﷺ says, Inna umirna ma'ashir al-anbiya. Us, the prophets, we were commanded and ordered أن نكلم الناس بقدر عقولهم, to assess the people's intellect and to talk to them at their level. You see the other party that you're talking to. See his state of mind, his level, and you try to give them that information, that knowledge. You need to understand, to know this, you need to know about your people. You need to know about the one who you're talking to. I cannot just walk in and just talk to the people about some of the things that we have and we believe in without understanding their mindset. His Eminence, Grand Ayatollah Al-Uzma As-Sayyid Ali Sistani, may Allah prolong his life, I was benefiting from him in the last visit that I had. He said, our books have many things. Some of what in the books is correct, some is wrong. What is correct in our books, some can be told, some you need to know who you're saying it to before you say it. We need to be very careful. That's why a scholar is one who understands the minds of others and who calibrates to a point that the listener is not lost but is interested. The listener does not deny but wants to research. He sparks the minds and the interest of the individual. How do you bring the hearts of the individuals if you don't have their minds? See, a heart without a mind is a heart that will create problem for you. Why? Because a heart without a mind is one of emotions. You need to keep those emotions stirring up. Someone else comes with those emotions, he steals them. But the minds, they look for the truth. They don't care who's saying it. They know the truth, they know the people of the truth then. اعرف الحق, know the truth, تعرف أهله, you'll know its people. That is why to utilize our minds, the most precious things that Allah has given to us is our number one duty. And you'll find the Prophet ﷺ said, أعقل الناس. Listen to this. أعقل الناس. أعقل الناس is the one who used his or her minds to the utmost, in the best way. Who is it? أشدهم مداراة للناس. He is the one who's best at dealing with people. He knows when to smile. He knows when to be there. He knows how and to what degree can he and how he talks to people. وَأَذَلُّ النَّاسِ مَنْ أَهَانَ النَّاسِ. And the most degraded amongst the people are whom? The ones who insult the people. When you walk and you think so highly of yourself, looking down at other people, believe me, in the eyes of the Prophet ﷺ, you are the most degraded person. Why? Because you are insulting people. You don't need to insult people. You don't need to reflect negatively like this on people. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, رَأْسُ الْعَقْلِ بَعْدَ الدِّينِ التَّوَدُّدُ إِلَى النَّاسِ وَاصْطِنَاعِ الْخَيْرِ. Your intellect is best manifested after your religion is in the way you deal with people. In the way you do good to people. Good people and bad people. And we see that Al-Imam Salamullahi Ta'ala alayhi, he says, he related, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had related, listen to this hadith. أَلَا أُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِشَرِّ النَّاسِ. Should I tell you the worst and the most devious of all people? قالوا بلى. Yes, tell us. He said, "Man abghadha an-nas wa abghadahu an-nas." Whoever hated people and people hated him. This is the worst type of person. The one who you see people are so negative, pessimists. Oh man, these people are bad. These people are this. He or she's always putting people down. They always hate their surrounding. Everyone is a failure. Everyone is not doing well. Everyone is this. Everyone is that. Subhanallah. قال ألا أنبئكم بشر من هذا? Do you want me to tell you worse than this type of people? They were, oh my God, there's even worse. They said yes. قال الذي لا يقيل عثرة. One who does not overlook a mistake. ولا يقبل معذرة, and does not accept an apology. ولا يغفر ذنبا, and does not forgive a sin. Is worse than the worst people. He said, do you want me to tell you even worse than the worst of worst people? They said, yes, Ya Rasulullah. He said, من لا يؤمن شره ولا يرجى خيره. Who you cannot safeguard his evil and you cannot hope in any good from him. This is how we are with people. We need to see, are we in a position or in a place that we are hated by people? We are disliked by people? People don't hope for any good that comes out of us? How we think about one another? At the end of the day, dear brothers and sisters, we see that Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and the way we were brought by, they were telling us and teaching us is all to be good individuals in our communities. كونوا في الناس كالنحل في الطير ليس شيء من الطير إلا وهو يستضعفها ولو يعلم ما في أجوافها لم يفعل بها ما يفعل. Be amongst the people like the bees amongst the birds. The bees amongst the birds. The bird sees the bee so weak, doesn't know what's inside that bee. And if they would have known what's inside that bee, they would have not have done what they have done to it. And the Imam Salamullahi Ta'ala alayhi, he says, listen to this. I swear to God, the words of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam are so great. He says, خالط الناس بألسنتكم وأبدانكم. Mix with the people, with your bodies, and when you talk to them, communicate with them. فارقوهم بقلوبكم وأعمالكم. But you make yourself unique through what? Your actions and your hearts. فوالذي نفسي بيده. And then he tells us how we become. He goes, I'll give you an example. That you would be groups amongst groups, and you'll be tested and tested and tested and further tested until the very few is left. The question is, sometimes we say the very few, we measure ourselves to this crowd. Oh my God, does it mean that's only 2 or 3 people? At the end of the day, dear brothers and sisters, a humanity along all the 1400 years, how many people? In the billions and billions. So to have even maybe 200, 300, even 1 billion is good. It's a possibility. How and where are we within this group? Dear brothers and sisters, we see that we, as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, when you talk to the mind only, the mind is so powerful. You always have to ask yourself, how did I learn what I learned? I want to leave you with this. This tonight is the last night I'm here amongst you, and I want you to take this from me. When I learn something, I do not shut down and say, I'm not going to learn anything else. You know who is the weakest person? The one who's threatened by an idea. And if you feel that anytime someone throws a question at you, you become weak and you get scared and say, oh, I don't want to listen to this. Don't talk to me about this. You are so weak. Your mind is so fragile. As a matter of fact, you become like those in the Holy Quran when the Prophet talks to them, they say, no. We will only take what we were inherited, what we have inherited by our fathers. Why? Their minds are very fragile. They're not strong. A strong man or woman is one whose mind is so strong. They are open to any idea. But when I say open, it doesn't mean they apply it. It means they're open to listen. And when they listen with the ability to critique and analyze. And at the end of the day, we all learn. And at the end of the day, even in all of our thinking, I can build a further advanced understanding of what I already understand. So don't ever be threatened by an idea, even if it might be strange to you. Some of us, dear brothers and sisters, they get scared from any different idea, from any strange idea, from anything that is... Why? Our community, us as Shia Muslims, our uniqueness is in our minds. Our uniqueness is in the way we think. Some of us say, oh my God, they keep on talking about the differences in the jurists and their minds and their ideas. Why can't we unite? Why can't we? No. If it's not the ma'soom, the immaculate, then we should never have only one. Why? Listen to me carefully. If it's not the ma'soom who is leading us, who is not the immaculate leading us, then we should never say we only want one. Why? Because it's the ma'soom when you remember at the beginning of the lecture what I said? The premise and the logic. When it comes to the ma'soom, the premise and the logic is 100% correct. What does it mean? It means that it matches and fits reality. Anyone else somewhere will have something either with their conclusion or with their logic. That is why I do not want to listen to one idea. I want to listen to many ideas. Collectively, our scholars protect their religion. Why? Of the Hawza, the beauty of the Hawza is you see that when the idea, I was with one of the scholars one time and he said, the beauty of the Hawza, my son? I said, yes, Sayyidina, what is it? He goes that when we put out ideas, when I'm sitting with my advanced classes and advanced students and I throw an idea out there, these minds, they are empowered to take my idea apart and challenge it. If it stands the first challenge, the idea is carried by my students when they go to other classes to talk about the idea. Now the next teacher starts challenging my ideas. And if my idea is shot down because there's something wrong with it, it is not strong, then I will learn because the answer is going to come to me and I'll be corrected. I just benefited from my wrong idea to build my mind better. That is why. That is why one time I was talking to some of the brothers as, why don't we have, for example, a marja in the United States? Why don't, dear brothers and sisters, the marja'iyya always exists right in the heart of the seminary. You know why? Because at the end of the day, the grand jurist is always coming with ideas for the community. and the ideas need to be challenged by scholars of his caliber. If we have only one person at that level, who's going to challenge him? At the end we say, oh, mashallah, mashallah. That's all we're going to say. Whatever he says, oh, mashallah, mashallah, and salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, and wa. Why? No one to challenge him at that caliber. But in the Hawza, dare you say something? You know you got to be at the level when you say it, you better prove it. And believe me, at the Hawza nothing is taken for granted just because the Sayyid said. Hold it, why did he say so? What if he said? I remember sitting in one of the advanced classes just to attend. I was with my uncle, may Allah prolong his life, and he is himself one of the prominent scholars, and at that level they also still attend scholars of higher scholars. So I was hesitant because, you know, sitting with these scholars is something, it's a different feeling. And I remember when they were sitting, one of the grand jurists of the time is still alive, he was discussing, and you know, it's very amazing because my uncle I asked him, what are you guys reading from? He said from this book, and then I told him, what is the other book? He goes, these are different references that we take with us. As the Sayyid who was giving the discussion, what's called Al-Bahth Al-Kharij, the advanced lectures, he was explaining a phrase in the book, and he was holding it like this and saying, well, the Sayyid in the book says, and he kept on talking. I kind of peeked and pulled the book from my uncle's hand. I started following, and my uncle was attentive to the scholar. He's over maybe 70 years old, and he was saying the text word by word. I'm like, probably he just, you know, memorized the book so many times he used it. Well, he said, and you know what? If you go to this book, he was referencing another book, and he paused, he goes, I believe page 72, yeah, maybe right in the middle, you will read, and he kept on going. I'm like, oh God, okay, this is, so I took the reference. And he started, and I was writing. My uncle actually laughed. He's like, what, trying to act like you're actually a student? But I wanted to see the text. The point is, when he was done, I went and checked. He had memorized it word by word. SubhanAllah, how could they do this? They live with this knowledge. And as he was engaged with the discussion, one of the students, he paused, he goes, I apologize, Sayyidina, I'm sorry. And he goes, no, say, why are you sorry? He said, he goes, if I'm wrong, correct me. What are you here for? And he slammed the book like this. He goes, correct me if I'm wrong. He goes, Sayyidina, but what if I'm wrong? He goes, so learn. And he paused, he goes, well, okay. And he started attacking in a very intellectual way. And it was such a beautiful, heated discussion where the Sayyid, I still remember this, he was leaning over and talking. One of the students by him, he was saying, you're going to fall, sit down. It was such an engaged, heated discussion. And then, here's the thing, when they were done, everything was done, the student came, kissed the Sayyid's hand. The Sayyid hugged him, he goes, think like this. Show me that I'm wrong. This is so great. He goes like, I'm like, oh my God. That was so beautiful. Really. It's so opposite to what we are taught in our colleges and universities. Not in the, maybe we have a lot of content in our colleges and universities, but we lack this way of style of dealing with one another. To love the knowledge, to respect your teacher, to adore your teacher, to truly say, "Man allamani harfan sayyarani abdan." Whoever teaches me a letter makes me a slave to him. Why? Because they taught me. This is amazing. Dear brothers and sisters, there is so much that we have to, this environment, planted in this place. Make it happen. Make this communication, this challenge of ideas, sit down, have an open forum, throw an idea out there, pull an idea out of the textbook, look at what is being talked on TV, address the ideas, address the different ways of thinking, See what is right, see what is wrong, challenge it with supervision. And today, dear brothers and sisters, we go live these moments in Karbala that teaches us how to think, teaches us how to choose between right and wrong. And dear brothers and sisters, in those nights, on the days of Muharram, after Lady Zainab alayha salam, on the 11th day, with the women and the children, when they were brought together to be taken to the castle of Ibn Ziyad, dear brothers and sisters, they say Lady Zainab alayha salam and the woman and the children were brought together as they were forced to walk amongst the bodies, dear brothers and sisters. They say there were the body of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Then they say there was a tent where they were collecting the bodies of the companions of Imam Hussein, and another tent, they say, where they were putting together the bodies of the families of Imam Hussein. Then there was another, it was the body of Habib ibn Mudahir, and then far away was the body of Al-Abbas alayhi salam. Dear brothers and sisters, they say Lady Zainab was making sure all the women and the children were together as they were taken inside Kufa. They say in Kufa, the people started gathering around them to see them. Lady Zainab alayha salam, she called at them, Ahl al-Kufa, O people of Kufa, you shed the tears today, yet yesterday you were killing Imam Hussein in the battlefield of Karbala. Dear brothers and sisters, they say when they brought Lady Zainab alayha salam and the woman into the castle of Yazid, they say Lady Zainab took the corner and the rest of the women surrounded her. Imam Zain al-Abidin sat on one end. They say when Ibn Ziyad la'natullahi alayh entered the council, he looked, he said when he saw Lady Zainab, for Lady Zainab's majesty cannot be hidden, he said, who's that woman? They said, she is Zainab, the daughter of Ali. She is Zainab, the sister of Hussein. Ibn Ziyad, la'natullahi alayh, what did he have in front of him? The head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He started hurting Lady Zainab with his words. They say Ar-Rabab, she looked at the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. She held it in her hands. He started calling Sayyidi Hussein, oh beloved Imam Hussein. Dear brothers and sisters, so many things happened right at the moment that they had entered that castle. So many different things. The wonderful thing, it's not narrated by the Shia, it's actually narrated by the Sunnah. How the skies turned red, how it was dark for so long, how it was seen as if things were crying on Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And this is not the Shia talking, this is Ahl Sunnah narrating and saying on behalf of those who hated and killed Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So to understand and realize the tragedy of Karbala. But tonight, dear brothers and sisters, they say Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, the Imam and his abilities, he was able to exit the council of Ibn Ziyad and go. And tonight, the 13th, what happened? They say Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he went out back to the Karbala. In Karbala, as on by the 12th or the 13th night, they say there's a tribe from Bani Asad. They were coming through when they saw all these bodies, but there was light coming out from these bodies. They didn't know what to do. They heard in these vicinities the name of Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. They say Bani Asad didn't know what to do. They couldn't carry the bodies. They couldn't bury the bodies. They were stumbled. They didn't know what to say until they saw someone coming from Al-Kufa. They tried to hide because they weren't sure. Was it from Ibn Ziyad? They weren't sure what to do. Then Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam came from Kufa. He called on Bani Asad, come with me. They said, we just saw the bodies. He said, ma alaykum, don't worry. These are the bodies of my father and his companions and his holy household. They looked around because you know, dear brothers and sisters, only an imam can bury an imam. So they say Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, after making the grave for Imam Hussein, no one was able to help him. He told Bani Asad, don't worry, I have who can help me and aid me. The angels of Allah were aiding Imam Zayn al-Abidin in the burial. They say that Imam alayhi salam, after the burial of his father, went and buried all the ashab, the companions, and went and buried all the family, Ahlul Bayt. But there was one, Al-Imam alayhi salam started looking, and he kept on walking further. They followed him. He said, they told him, Sayyidi, who are you looking for? He said, Wallah, I am looking for the body of my uncle Al-Abbas. They say when they tried to dig the grave for Al-Abbas alayhi salam, dear brothers and sisters, Al-Abbas alayhi salam, the last time Imam Hussein alayhi salam left him, there was an arrow in his heart, an arrow in his eye. Dear brothers and sisters, they say Al-Abbas alayhi salam, he was left over there far away from the camp. Remember, because he did not want to go to the camp of Imam Hussein, where Lady Sukaina was waiting for him with the water. They say Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam buried Al-Abbas alayhi salam, and there he stood. As-salamu ala al-Husayn, as-salamu ala al-Husayn وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليكم سادتي. Dear brothers and sisters, one last call tonight from here. Let us echo our voices to Karbala. Let us all call together. Assalamu ala al-Husayn وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين اللهم بحق محمد وآل Muhammad. Oh Allah, we beg you, we ask you to accept the little we have been offering in these nights, Ya Allah, to forgive us, to guide us, to show us the way. Allahumma bihaqqi Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. And let us recite and give the blessings of the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha to the deceased believers after Salati ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
My Hussein, 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 my Hussein. Hussein is from me, and I am from Hussein. Thoughts of you drown me in grief and in pain. My Hussein, 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 my Hussein. Every day is Ashura, and every place is Karbala. When you'll face Naiwala, you will return to Allah. My Hussein, 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 my Hussein. Be brave, oh my son, when Asghar will be heard. Be strong, oh my son, when Qasim falls on earth. My Hussein, 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 my Hussein. When Abbas will fall and Sakina will call, be solid like a wall, I'll be with you all. My Hussein, 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 my Hussein. Don't give up your right when Akbar goes to fight. The history will write what happened in your sight. My Hussein, 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 my Hussein. I'll be with you, and you'll be with me. I am from you, and you are from me. My Hussein, my Hussein, my Hussein, my Hussein, my